Pues bienvenidos todos, me da muchísimo gusto que haya tanta gente para recibir a Vandana Shiva. Les voy a leer una breve semblanza sobre ella y más que nada yo quisiera, antes de decirles quién es, que supongo que todos saben quién es, por eso está abarrotado este lugar, les voy a leer una cita de este libro que se llama Las Guerras del Agua, que es un libro que ella publicó en español con la editorial Siglo XXI. Dice: un estilo de vida de 20% de la población de la Tierra que utiliza 80% de los recursos del planeta despojará a 80% de su población de su porción justa de recursos. Fíjense nomás. Y a la larga destruirá el planeta. Este es el tipo de cosas sobre las que escribe Vandana Shiva, que es doctora en física y activista ambiental de renombre, lucha por la justicia económica, alimentaria y de género. Es autora y editora de muchos libros influyentes como Making Peace with Earth, o sea, haciendo las paces con la tierra, Earth Democracy, la democracia de la tierra, Soil Not Oil, grano no combustible, Staying Alive, sobreviviendo, Stolen Harvest, cosechas robadas, Water Wars, que es este que les acabo de enseñar, las guerras del agua, y Globalization's New Wars, las nuevas guerras de la globalización. Ha recibido más de 20 premios internacionales, incluido el que se considera como el Premio Nobel de la Paz Alternativo. Este premio se llama el Right Livelihood Award, la beca John Lennon Yoko Ono por la paz, el Premio de la Paz de Sydney y el Premio de la Paz de Calgary. Además, es miembro del World Future Council y uno de los líderes y miembros del Consejo del Foro Internacional sobre Globalización. Vandana fundó la unidad de género en el International Center for Integrated Mountain Development en Kathmandu y fue miembro fundador del Women's Environment and Development Organization. Vandana Shiva ha trabajado como asesora de distintos gobiernos en la India y en el extranjero, así como en organizaciones no gubernamentales como la International Forum on Globalization, la Women's Environment Development Organization y la Third World Network. También preside la Comisión del Futuro de la Comida en la Toscana italiana y fue miembro del comité científico que asesoró al expresidente José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. La revista Time la calificó de heroína ambiental en 2003 y Asia Week la incluyó en la lista de los 5 comunicadores más poderosos de Asia. Es un placer para mí presentar a Vandana Shiva. Welcome, Vandana.
And thank you to the people of Corn, my love. And as the corn reminds you, and the wheat and the rice reminds us, we are the people of the earth, and the foods and fruits of the earth. Of course, there's been a 500 illusion of separation, the violent separation through colonialism, which was really a war. It was not a civilizing mission. Those who were trying to civilize us needed to be civilized themselves. And I think it is still a moment for us to remind them what it means to be Earth citizens, what it means to live at peace with the Earth, all her beings, including all our fellow human beings. We are not more and less. We are not superior and inferior. We are just rich in our diversity. And diversity is not a problem, it is our strength. Of course, it is seen as a problem by a colonizing mind, which would either like everything to be in its image or exterminate it. So colonization and extermination go hand in hand. But with it has grown other hierarchies which are totally in the heads of powerful men. The hierarchy between men and women. We are equal but different. We are not unequal, and that's what feminism has been all about. And our being different does not mean we can be objectified and exterminated, as the disappearances and violence against women and the growing violence against women across the world is showing us. The idea that somehow humans are outside the earth and above her, what could be a worse illusion? Because if we were not part of the earth, we would have no air to breathe, no water to drink, no food to eat, no corn to celebrate. Anthropocentrism, as this illusion, has allowed the devastation of this planet. And so much went into the architecture of anthropocentrism. So much went into defining the conquest of the earth as knowledge and science. Francis Bacon wrote a book, he's called the father of modern science. It's not the beginning of science. Science means to know. The Mexican peasants who evolved the diversity of corn in richness that no company can ever reach. All they manage is to put a toxic gene into the corn. That's not intelligence. That's violence. It's pollution.
No van a traducir, no va a traducir.
So Francis Bacon wrote an entire book called The Birth of Masculine Time. Now we must conquer nature. To be part of nature is feminine thought. Masculine thought is conquest. But that's not how men of indigenous cultures thought, and that's not how men who are in this room think. That's why you're here. You know you are part of the earth, you're part of the human family. But the armor of anthropocentrism came from two other distortions. The first was the distortion in knowledge, the rise of the mechanical philosophy, the definition of nature as dead, but with it also the definition that women don't know, peasants don't know, workers don't know. They are mere objects, they're mere inputs in the money-making machine. And that's why they were reduced to labor. And I think it's such a violence to the word labor, which comes from giving birth. You know, when we're giving birth, we are in labor. That's the origin of that word. The earth gives birth. Mothers give birth. Stealing the fruits of labor is not growth. It is not knowledge. I remember Bacon, who wrote Bacon's Laws, was also the New England governor, wrote that said, the idea of reverence for the earth that native people have is an impediment in man's empire over lesser creatures. And of course the empire he was thinking of was not just over all of nature's beings, it was over all of human beings who were not part of that system. And if you look at the dictionaries, the Encyclopedia Britannica defined indigenous people as part of the fauna and flora. Of course we are part of the fauna and flora. But that doesn't mean you take away our human rights. In fact, it means you respect the rights of the fauna and flora and the human beings who are part of it. For millennia, our lands have been cultivated. I was giving a lecture in the Sydney Opera House, and they gave me a book which I read on my flight back from Australia. This must be 2 years ago. And it's basically called The Biggest Garden on Earth, defining how the Aboriginal people of Australia were gardeners. You don't see them as that because the literature talks about them as bushmen. As bushmen who only took what they could. No, at every moment they were managing the landscape in harmony with the earth. For centuries you have farmed this land. In India we farmed for 10,000 years, not at war with the earth, but with the laws of the earth. And that to me is true science. And that's the science I've been trying to learn from the earth, from the seed, from biodiversity, from our peasants over the last 35 years, to stop the violence of the Green Revolution, to stop the violence of GMOs, and the attempted future violence of the new GMOs, where they want to use gene editing as if life was a word program of cut and paste. For every change that is made in one place in the genome, one gene change leads to 1,500 unpredictable changes. This is not editing life, it is messing up the tree of life in ignorance. Worse, with gene editing, they want to do what they call gene drives. Now, you are the land of the sacred amaranth, amaranto. Yeah? We are the land of the sacred amaranth. And I was told in my older visits, in defense of corn, that amaranth had been made illegal by the conquerors in this land because of its sacredness. Well, in America, the failure of the GMO revolution is showing in the fact that half of the farmland is overtaken by superweeds that have become resistant to glyphosate and Roundup. Now, the sensible thing to do is stop the GMOs, stop the glyphosate, stop the Roundup. Simple, because we know how to do good farming, which controls weeds. Your system of 3 sisters, your milpa, Navdanya, 9 seeds, you grow diversity together. They manage the pests, they manage the weeds themselves through the diversity, through the ecological functions and ecological services. Instead, what does the militarized mind that sees itself as war with the earth and life on earth prescribe? The Defense Research Agency of the United States, called DARPA, has joined hands with Bill Gates, who is the new conqueror of the world. You have to watch out for him, because in the name of philanthropy, he is destroying so much undemocratically, not respecting democracy, constitution, people's rights, and people's liberties. So he and DARPA write a report on gene drives. Some of it is about mosquitoes, which they're already releasing in the name of controlling malaria. But one application is on the amaranth, because the biggest superweed in America is now called the Palmer amaranth. It can't be controlled. It's taller than the soya bean, it's taller than the corn. That's because nature has intelligence. They forgot. They forgot species evolve. They forgot that when you bombard too many antibiotics in the animal factories, we are going to get antibiotic resistance. They forgot that when you pump too much Roundup on the fields, the diversity will evolve a resistance, and they can't control it now. So they want to control it through gene drives, which means pushing a species to extinction. They now want to put the amaranth to extinction. Earlier they just made it illegal. Now they would like the power to push it to extinction. Of course they don't have the power, because illusions have always failed. They will just create a bigger mess. So I have just written a letter along with major organizations to say gene drive should not be allowed. Not by the United Nations, not by national governments. And I hope you will, each of you, put pressure on your new government to remind them that certain tools are not to be deployed on this beautiful earth and in our societies and our communities. Now, the denial of creativity and self-organizing of nature, which is the very nature of life. Life is self-organized complexity. Life is self-organized intelligence. That's what the science of living systems is now teaching us. It is not inert. It is not dead. It is not just this much mineral to be mined and these genes to be mined. It is living and it is intelligent. I think the two big steps that were taken to deny the creativity and productivity of the earth and of women are what I have called the production boundary and the creation boundary. The production boundary just says nature doesn't produce anything, she's just raw material. Only when we use the raw material we give it value. Nature has no value in and of itself. And in a similar way, women don't produce. That's why you get more and more women replying to questionnaires, even when they're working morning till evening, they're working in the field, they're working in their homes. When you ask them, what do you do? They said, I don't work. Because you don't sell your labor. I don't work. Work has been reduced to selling your labor. Creative work has been defined as not working. So you construct during the wars a totally unscientific construct called the GDP, the gross domestic product and the gross national product. I don't know how many of you are aware, it was created for the war. It was created to mobilize resources of society and the wealth of society, pull it out and use it to buy more arms, build bigger military, buy more fighter jets and more navy ships. So they created the production boundary, which defines that if you produce what you consume, you don't produce. The peasants growing the corn, if they grow it for themselves, they're not producing. When you buy toxic GMO corn dumped on you from America by Cargill, there is growth taking place. Of course for Cargill. And in the measures of growth. More recently, and this is what has shaped so much of my work over the last 3 decades, more recently they created another artificial boundary. An artificial boundary which defines as intellectual property knowledge stolen from us, creativity stolen from nature. When the toxic companies said at a meeting in 1987 that they were now going to push GMOs in order to take patents on seed, and that was going to be their future, and to do this they would have to make it illegal for farmers to have their own seed, because then farmers would be forced to buy their seed every year, pay them royalties, and they were looking at trillions of dollars of profits. The day I heard this, it was in March 1987, I said to myself, but you don't invent the seed. A patent is given for an invention. Interestingly, the piece of paper that Christopher Columbus sailed with, that Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand had given was called a letter patent. A letter patent. Go colonize the lands that don't belong to us and take them over on our behalf. I call patenting of seed the second coming of Columbus, and we are not going to allow it. Because seed has been evolved by nature over millennia. It has been co-evolved by peasants and farmers. Indian farmers who gave us 200,000 varieties of rice. The Mexican peasants who gave us thousands of varieties of corn. Crops so diverse that each of our food cultures is diverse. Not just across countries, but across regions. In India, when we travel, every 30 miles the food becomes different because the plants become different and the agriculture becomes different. We are a land of diversity, as Mexico is. And we are a land of diversity, of biological diversity, as well as cultural diversity, which go hand in hand. That's why we have so many languages. We have so much imagination. And diversity is what makes a militarized monoculture of the mind panic. Not a single seed has been invented by Monsanto because they can't invent it. They can only put toxic genes into it and take a patent. Now in India, we work to make sure patents on seed could not be given because seed is not invented. That's what our law says, Article 3J. You have a similar law in this country that does not allow patenting of seed. And as the new NAFTA is signed, as there will be a new attempt to not just introduce new monopolies on seed, this is the time to defend the right of the seed as a right of nature, the right of the seed as a right of farmers, the right to the seed as a right of eaters. Because from good seed comes good food. I started to save seed only because I believed nature has rights, farmers have rights, and toxic companies don't have rights to impose their poisons and GMOs on us. But today I realize that the simple act of seed saving has allowed us to farm in ways that we could feed 2 times India's population. Instead of the current situation where every second child is malnourished and wasted, because when you do industrial farming, you don't grow food for nourishment, you grow commodities for profit. Corn cannot be reduced to a commodity for the profit of Monsanto and Cargill. We must reclaim the commons of our food, the commons of our corn, the commons of our rice. But not only is it stealing the amazing creativity of nature and farmers, it is also pushing people into a new slavery. I call it a new slavery because if a farmer is forced to buy seed every year, that's slavery. If a farmer is forced to pay royalties and rents on the work of nature and their ancestors, that's slavery. When Monsanto entered India illegally in 1998 with the BT cotton, I of course immediately sued them, and those cases are still alive in court. But in spite of being in India illegally and in spite of our laws saying you cannot own the seed, you cannot take royalties, you cannot have a patent on seed, they started to collect royalties in the name of technology fees. They increased the price of seed in cotton from 5 rupees to 4,000 rupees, an 80,000% jump. The seed was unreliable. It was meant for irrigation. It was being sold in dry lands. It couldn't control the pests. The pests were becoming resistant. farmers were having to take the seed 3-4 times on credit. And when in 3 years' time, the agent selling seed and chemicals said, your land is mine, that day, the farmer goes one last time to the agent, borrows for a bottle of pesticide, goes to the field which he has inherited from ancestors over millennia. That land is their mother. And they cannot bear the separation and the betrayal of Mother Earth. More than 300,000 farmers have committed suicide in India because of debt, for unnecessary seeds and unnecessary chemicals. Most of these suicides are in the cotton area. 99% cotton is Monsanto cotton. Now, in each of these issues, we have cases in the Supreme Court of India. We have cases on the monopoly. We have cases on the high price of seed, and they've been forced to bring down the price of seed. We have cases on them not having a patent and illegally collecting royalty. And we will continue to work through our constitution, our laws, to make sure that this lawless mafia is brought to justice. We've had inequality before, but the inequality of today is becoming a genocidal and ecocidal inequality. It is pushing millions of species to the brink that more and more scientists are saying we are in the 6th mass extinction. I just organized a major international biodiversity congress in India to take stock of this destruction, and also to make a commitment to build an ecological civilization on the basis of us being one Earth family interconnected with our life. But it isn't just the species extinction. It is the climate havoc, which is killing hundreds of thousands every year, costing trillions of dollars of damage. And industrial farming is the single biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, as I've written in my book, Soil Not Oil. Between the chemical fertilizers, the giant machinery, you know, the US farmlands don't look like farms, they look like war zones. And now they want to have farming without farmers. They want to have tractors that are driverless tractors. The only job left for American farmers is driving a tractor. Even that, they're being told, they don't need to do, because driverless tractors will take care of it. They don't need to know what's in their soil, because in the driverless tractor will be spyware, which will send data to Monsanto, who will then sell back the data as big data, as soil data. They want to privatize the public systems that tell us about weather. Monsanto has bought up the world's biggest climate data corporation, and they want to sell climate data, and they want to link it to your insurance. It's a totalitarian system based on absence of care, compassion, and knowledge on how to live on this earth. And it means we are rushing blindfold to handing over power to a handful of people, but at the same time also handing over our future to them to be destroyed. Look at the figures. In 2010, there were 388 billionaires who controlled as much wealth as the bottom half of humanity. This number came down to 177 in 2011, to 159 in 2012, to 92 in 2013, to 80 in 2014, to 62 in 2018, to 8 in 2017. That's when I wrote my new book called Oneness versus the 1%, which I hope will become available in Mexico, because our experience and your experience is the same experience, and are preparing for the future by defending our rights is the same defense of rights. This year when I looked at the data, it was 5 men. 5 men control the wealth of the world. And how do they make this wealth? Do they make it by working? Do they make it by creating? No. As Gandhi said, it is wealth without work, and he called it a sin. Wealth without work is a sin, according to Gandhi. They make it by speculation, by rent collection, by stealing, by theft. So the financial economy, where do all these billionaires put their money? They put it into a financial economy. And after the collapse of 2008, that financial economy has exploded. It used to be the case that the big banks on Wall Street were a problem, but they look like nobodies compared to these investment funds that control the rich people's money. And all of this finance is hundreds of times bigger than the real wealth of the planet. As an economist, Joel Kurtzman, said in '94, and that's a long time ago in the way these things are going, the financial economy is somewhere between 20 to 50 times larger than the real economy. This is not the economy of trade, but of speculation. Its commerce is in financial instruments, and while its ultra-high-tech infrastructure straddles the globe and moves several $1 trillion a day between the major and minor nodes of the network, it is largely unregulated. Few people realize money in its traditional sense has met its device. And in India, where we still deal with cash, they use all kinds of coercive laws to make cash illegal and impose a digital economy, so you have to get hooked into this financial machine. Few still have paused to reflect on its impact. That's the reflection I've tried to undertake in my new book, Oneness versus the 1%, because it's about our oneness with the earth, our oneness as humanity, the powers and the rights that that gives us, versus the totally illegitimate power of a totally constructed wealth by a handful of thieves. Now, two of the very big investment funds are Vanguard and BlackRock. They didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. Or they had a few $1,000s. In 2008, at the time of the collapse, they each had $1 billion. No, they each had $1 trillion by then. By 2012, Vanguard, without doing anything, just speculating on people's money, they call themselves exchange-traded funds, which means they're speculating by the second, digitally, by the second. And the more the instability of our economies, the more the returns to them, because they bet on risks. They want an unstable world. They want more risks. So Vanguard had increased to 3 trillion and BlackRock to 4. Now by the time I was writing this, they were 3. By the time I finished editing and the editor wanted the footnote, I looked, in a year magically, the 3 trillion had become 4 trillion. Our entire GDPs are about $1 trillion. India's about 1.3 trillion. All the 1.3 billion people who work every day to create wealth are nullified by this money machine. And guess where BlackRock went by 2017? To 6.3 trillion. Now, so it's bigger than anything. But on my flight over yesterday, I was reading the Financial Times. I get my international reading done on flights. And it was interesting that there's a story. First of all, they're using the word I've used in my book called the money machine, a vast money machine. Yesterday, BlackRock lost 30%. 30%. but they have made everything of our lives connected to them. That means our economies disappear by 30%. And one of the new issues I'm trying to deal with in India is corporations like BlackRock entering our agriculture through a whole new gimmick called climate bonds. You know, they want to speculate on climate change. They want to lock our development paths into their bonds. And because they've made so much money, they're trying to make the world believe that without their money, we cannot run. We cannot do agriculture. We cannot run our hospitals. We cannot run our education systems. So I went back to understand, where does the word invest come from? Where does the word investment come from? Did it mean money? No. To invest means to decorate. And my mind went back to this peasant who, we were having a meeting in a tribal area, and he suddenly got up and said, now I must leave. And I said, where are you going? My idea was, if he's leaving so suddenly, there must be an emergency at home. He says, I now have to go to decorate the earth. They don't talk of agriculture as a production system. It is going to decorate the earth. That is investment. Investment in the beauty of the land. Investment in the care of the land. That's what peasants have done. That's what women have done. That's the real work that we are being called on to do today. That's the investment we need. And all of these trillions that are totally fictitious money cannot be allowed to not just take away our rights, but with them take away the rights of the earth. The creativity of the earth and our creativity is at stake. And our creativity and the earth's creativity work together. When we take care of the soil, we are not losing it to desertification and erosion. When we take care of our seeds, we are not planting GMOs. When we take care of our rivers and not allowing them to be contaminated, we have clean drinking water. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. We are not separate. And human rights are derived from the rights of the earth because we are part of the earth. We are part of the earth family. And today, as true democracy is under such assault by the rule of the money machine, which is even able to buy elections. We watched it. You have a brilliant neighbor these days, north of you. And, the record is totally out, how he won the elections. Just drink some water. I'm not speaking yet. The money machine had to keep going, but the people were waking up. So many jobs had been lost. The young people were out wanting to reclaim their future. Every American student leaves university with a $20,000, $30,000 debt. And no work, no jobs. So, Facebook took all its Facebook messages and sold them to a company called Cambridge Analytica, which then analyzed it on the basis of 4 hates. The hate of women, the hate of blacks, the hate of migrants, and the hate of Muslims. This was then sold to the parties. The party made its election campaigns and election advertising on this basis. This is called artificial intelligence. I call it non-intelligence. Because it's not intelligent to destroy the very society of which you are a part. First, through the money machine, and then through the virus of hate. I am increasingly coming to the conclusion that an economy of greed and limitless greed must go in hand with the politics of hate and fear. That's why defending our rights, reclaiming democracy and deepening and enlarging it. Deepening it to include all of the earth. Because when we stand with the earth, we are stronger. When we stand with the millions of other beings, we are not just 7 billion. We become trillions. And my lovely image of democracy today is the recognition that not only do we have thousands of plants out there that feed us, and the more the diversity out there, the more it takes care of the soil, the more food it gives us. As I said, we can feed 2 times India's population. Through diversity, Mexico can feed not just Mexico, but probably North America with real good food, not crap that is being sold as food today. And of course, with it is going this chronic disease epidemic that is spreading cancers everywhere, obesity and diabetes everywhere, cardiovascular problems, hypertension, and neurological problems. Autism has exploded in America, where they're now predicting 1 in 2 children will be autistic. And that's all happening because of the toxics in the food and the lack of nutrition in our food. So in the last year, I've been doing a lot of work on food and health. And we wrote a book called Annam Food as Health, and we've done a manifesto, which I'll be very happy to send to movements here on food for health, so that you can connect the vital role of peasant agriculture to the maintenance of the health of the people and the health of the planet. And while doing this work, I realized that only 10 years ago, science has woken up to the fact that A, we have a second brain, which is our gut. Our gut has 100 trillion microbes, 100 trillion microbes. When we give them good food, they do brilliant work and make the neurotransmitters and the enzymes and everything else that makes us the human beings that we are. We are only 10% human cells. The rest come from the microbes. We are only 10% of us. We are 90% the other biodiversity, which is in us. Now that, to me, is power. That, to me, is power, and that's intelligence. And the reason this is being called the second brain is because more neurological activity is taking place in our gut through the food we eat. And that food comes from our relationship with the earth. So now I don't see food as food. I see it as a gift from the earth that we receive when we give in gratitude to the earth. And that's ecological agriculture. That is agroecology. That's organic farming. That's the way farmers have farmed. We, of course, need to make huge leaps, but what we are dealing with is illusions. And for illusions, all you need to is drop the illusion. So there's an illusion of capitalist patriarchy, of domination over nature and women, and profits above all, and money men as more than the earth and more another human being. Money men are an illusion of power. The real power is us. The real power is the earth. We have to reclaim it. Creating property, private property through enclosures, through grabbing land, through grabbing our seed, through grabbing our minds. You know, what is Facebook but commodifying our very exchanges with our friends? How did it become so big? By selling our exchanges. Basically, they stole our friendships and call it friend. And I think we have to be very creative in new kinds of legal challenges to the totally illegal ways in which these shifts are happening. We need to, above all, redefine wealth. Original meaning of wealth is well-being. It never meant money. Just like invest did not mean money, wealth did not mean money. To invest meant to beautify, to decorate. Wealth meant the state of well-being. We got to reclaim well-being as the true wealth of society. So I work with the government of Bhutan, and they've just had a new election, but they are clear. When their king returned from his first meeting at an international level, he said, I don't want to be like the West. I don't want to run after GDP while our people become more miserable and more poor and more unhappy. I'm going to maximize the happiness of my people. He said, we will not measure GNH and gross national product. We will measure gross national happiness. And the gross national happiness system of Bhutan is their planning system. Part of it is protecting the environment. Part of it is protecting your culture. Part of it is having respect for your traditions and your religion. They are a Buddhist country, and the principle of non-violence and compassion is central to Buddhism. And in India, we have a very beautiful prayer which says, may all beings be happy. We never say, let me have more money. May all beings be happy. We are at this existential moment for human evolution. I think the earth will carry on. Hot or cold, other species without us, she is brilliant. She'll evolve to the next step of her evolution. We are the ones whose future is threatened. And every scientist worth their name is saying that if we continue on this path, 100 years more, human beings will be extinct. We have 100 years. But it's just not that we have 100 years to change, we have 100 years to live. I think we have a window of 10 to 20 years to make a radical shift. And the radical shift is in our hands to make. This shift means recognizing that we are of the earth. We are part of the earth. She's our mother. She gives birth to us. We are her family. We are her children. I've also consolidated my 30 years of work on the seed, on biodiversity, in a new book called Origin, The Corporate War on Nature and Culture. And the last bit of it is precisely the subject of our talk today, the rights of the earth. We have managed to convince ourselves the earth has no rights, she's there for exploitation. But the earth has rights. The multiple imperatives to recognize the rights of the earth is first the survival imperative for our species. The second is the scientific and epistemic imperative of a necessary transition from a mechanistic reductionist paradigm of knowledge that treats nature as dead and uncreative to the paradigm of a living earth and knowledge of living systems in interconnectedness and complexity. The third is a shift in the paradigm of ownership and private property to the commons and the common good. And the fourth is an imperative of creating sustainable, fair and just economies, taking back the economy from the unfair rules of trade and the totally fictitious control of a handful of men making trillions to then take over the rest of the economy, wanting to control rents, collect rents from the food we eat, the water we drink, the thoughts we have, the friendships we have, our cultures, our knowledge. It is time for reclaiming sovereignty. It is time for reclaiming freedom. It is time for reclaiming our rights. And with nature as a partner, we have amazing strength, amazing power, amazing diversity, and we will not be stopped.
Qué maravilla, qué privilegio poder escuchar aquí a Vandana Shiva y que haya tanta gente joven. Eso es lo mejor ver desde aquí a tanta gente joven, a tantas mujeres, hombres y mujeres, pero muchas mujeres. Yo quiero hacerles solo un par de preguntas porque quiero que ustedes
Hermana Vandana Shiva, estuviste en Atenco, me enteré que ibas a estar este día aquí y dije, ahí tenemos que estar. Tenemos que estar con nuestra hermana que ha dado una lucha mundial por el maíz, por las semillas. Tú estuviste en esas tierras sagradas, esas tierras te recibieron y miraste y sentiste. Miraste a nuestros hermanos, a tus hermanos, miraste la esperanza de decir que esas tierras se deben de seguir conservando para nuestras futuras generaciones. Tú ya lo dijiste, son una bola de rufianes aquellos que quieren a toda costa convertir en negocios esas tierras. De hecho, nos están convirtiendo en negocio. Ya nos miran a todos los mexicanos con signos de pesos. Ya para ellos no somos seres humanos, pero nosotros somos seres humanos que amamos, sentimos y que sabemos quiénes somos y de dónde venimos. Y por eso es que estamos aquí, para defender esa tierra sagrada, para defender la cuenca del Valle de México, para defender el lago. Por eso decimos, yo prefiero el lago. Si Peña Nieto quiere el aeropuerto, yo prefiero el lago. El lago es la vida, el lago son los bosques, el lago son los cerros, el lago son las semillas, esas matas de maíz, esa semilla que nos da alimento, no a los mexicanos, sino a todo el mundo. Esas semillas son sagradas. Y si dijo Galeano, sagrada es la tierra y sagradas las manos de los campesinos que la siembran. Porque si no hay tierra, no hay campesinos. Pero si no hay campesinos, ¿quién la siembra? Entonces, no podíamos perder este momento. Sabemos que tu corazón, al igual que el de todos nosotros y el de los campesinos mexicanos, están latiendo a un mismo tiempo, porque amamos la tierra, porque amamos la vida, porque vamos a seguir luchando y porque ¿qué queremos aquí?
¡Tierra y libertad!
Y yo prefiero que no se escuchó, compañeros.
¡Prefiero el lago!
¿Y qué quiere Vandana Shiva?
I came to visit you in solidarity. I'm with you in solidarity.
Gracias, hermana. Gracias por darnos la oportunidad. No podíamos dejar pasar este foro donde iba a estar una gran hermana, una gran compañera, una gran defensora del maíz. Y nosotros venimos del maíz, somos del maíz. Y por eso estamos aquí y vamos a seguir caminando. Y el 25 los esperamos en el Ángel de la Independencia a las 4 de la tarde, al Monumento a la Revolución. No falten, hermanos, esta lucha es de todos, no es de unos. Defender la vida, estamos obligados todos a hacerla.
Muchas gracias, gracias.
I don't think it's an issue of enemy, it's a question of a handful of very deranged men. And with too much power, unaccountable power. I gave you the figures. Now if you look at the big corporations that are the face, when a mining company comes in or a Monsanto comes in, they're all owned by the billionaires and these investment funds now. So we are really talking about a money machine that has been made so big that we have to find creative ways to take away its absolutely unaccountable power. That's why I talked about the issue of illusions, and the subtitle of my book, Oneness versus the 1%, is Shattering Illusions, Seeding Freedom. Now, life is too complex, life is too diverse. None of us are in a position to give recipes to anyone else. But each of us is in a position of being the change we want to see, having a common understanding. The interesting thing is, that earlier, before the current round of, actually the first round of globalization was European colonization, but yours was Spanish and ours was British. It was very, we didn't talk to each other, even the language was different. The new round of colonization has connected us deeply because it's the same few players. And now with the financialization and digitalization, which is the next step of the fast forward to destruction, they're really a handful. So every day we have to be conscious to think, how am I more free? Yes, I should have a phone to communicate, but should I be a slave of my Apple? Yes, I should use the digital networks, but should I use them as a master or a slave? Yes, some money is necessary, but will I allow too much money in a few hands to become my new slavery, even while I run chasing more money and losing everything? My land, my peace, my community, my culture. So I follow three principles that I learned from Gandhi, who learned it from India's civilization. How do you stay free? He studied India, and he gave us three lessons that have been my principles, whether it's in defense of the seed, or defense of food, or defense of land, defense of knowledge. The first is the principle of self-organization and self-rule, which he called Swaraj, governing yourself. And this begins literally from the self as you, with the 90% companions in you. The second was Swadeshi, making. We've all been made to believe we must stop making what we use, and we must all consume. Fast fashion, fast food, we are all being made consumers. With a degraded life, we have to reclaim our capacity to create, to make, to produce. That's a very important source of freedom. And when the peasants stand up to deal with the airport, they're talking about the capacity to produce food. And finally, the lesson that for me is most important for our times, because when you have a rule of fictions, you have a rule of post-truth, you have a rule of fake media, fake science, fake everything. Truth becomes central. And Gandhi gave us the recipe of recognizing that there are higher laws to obey. He talked about the higher human laws. I add to it the higher laws of the earth, of us being part of the earth family. Those higher laws create our duty to obey those laws. That's what the peasants fighting the airport are doing. They're obeying the higher law of their land. They're obeying the higher law of their peasanthood. And he says, when brute law and laws coming from greed make it illegal for you to practice your higher law, it is your duty to disobey. This is what was called civil disobedience. It was adopted by Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement. It was adopted by Mandela in the anti-apartheid movement. And Gandhi practiced his first civil disobedience against the apartheid's regime to divide people according to race in 1906 in South Africa, because he was practicing as a lawyer in South Africa. And he gave it the powerful name Satyagrah. Satya is truth, Agrah is the force of truth. That is what I have tried to evolve for our times in our context. This is 150 years of Gandhi's birth anniversary. 150th centenary we are celebrating. And I think it is time to celebrate these amazing teachings of non-violent power that Gandhi allows us to cultivate in ourselves, in our communities. And we have an Earth University. I've built a farm to do the right kind of farming to protect seeds. And out of it has grown a place of learning, which we call the Earth University, learning from the earth, learning from communities. And in September, we do a 1-month course on agroecology. But 2nd October is Gandhi's birth anniversary, and we will be doing a one-week course on Gandhi and globalization. How do you, through non-violence, respond to the violence of greed and globalization and femicide?
Forjado por, sobre todo, los hombres a lo largo de siglos, milenios, ¿no? Y pues obviamente esa resistencia es difícil, ¿no? Creo que de ahí tenemos que partir. Mi pregunta concretamente es la siguiente. Si comparamos el modo de actuar de los seres humanos con el de otros animales, ¿no? Nos damos cuenta que parece que hay algunas coincidencias, ¿no? Sobre todo en el hecho de que, por ejemplo, las mujeres, no sé si por razones biológicas o por necesidad, se sienten atraídas a hombres poderosos en ocasiones, ¿no? No, no, seamos tolerantes, seamos tolerantes, seamos tolerantes. No, seamos tolerantes, seamos tolerantes. Hablemos del tema.
Oigan, dejen terminar la pregunta, por favor.
Seamos
Y
tolerantes.
te pido que concretes,
Sí.
porque tenemos muy poco tiempo. Por favor, no dejen que termine su planteamiento, estemos de acuerdo o no, dejemos que termine.
los ojos cuando...
Chico, ¿vas a concretar?
Sí,
Por favor, ok, concreta.
mi pregunta concreta es la siguiente. O sea, como pueden ver, hay intolerancia sobre este tema, pero me gustaría que...
Concreta, por favor, termine su pregunta, ¿vale?
Que si tú conoces a feministas que hayan reflexionado sobre este tema, que hayan... sí.
Any feminists who have thought about
Artificial constructs is the reason I'm able to think in freedom. And one of the artificial constructs is men are violent, women are this way. These are constructs. The other construct of anthropocentrism was humans are privileged with minds, with intelligence. People like Jane Goodall have done amazing work to show that we are like the chimpanzees. And now there's so much new work on plant intelligence, that plants are intelligent. And a physicist, Indian physicist J.C. Bose, did amazing work as a physicist on the intelligence of plant. It's never cited, but it was done at that time, that they're sentient beings. So much of what constructs go around us, I think we need to take them into account and say, is it true or not? So much of what manhood has become and what being a woman has become has been created and imposed as externally imposed categories. And I would like to end for you with another beautiful teaching from Gandhi, who of course practiced non-violence, but realized that compassion has to be cultivated. It isn't a given. It's not in women and not in men. It doesn't work that way. It has to be cultivated everywhere. And every day he did two things. He said one prayer, which was about all religions, because India was being divided at that time, you remember, like we're being divided again on religion. But the second prayer, which I love, is he said, Mujhko aur istri mein banao, which is Hindi for a phrase which said, make me more womanly, make me compassionate.